Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out the much anticipated Ultimate Spider-Man issue 1 by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Checchetto. Hickman's much anticipated reboot of the Spider-Man universe and Ultimate Universe is here, and he uses this first issue to explore the pretty mundane life of Peter Parker. He's a middle-aged man with a wife and 2 kids who works for the Daily Bugle. However, he's not working for J. Jonah Jameson though. He's working for Ben Parker. He's still very much alive uncle. Since this Ultimate Universe is new, Hickman does a fantastic job on the world building, something he's always been very good at through his Krakoa era X-Men, his Fantastic Four stuff, and even in the Ultimate Invasion series that preceded this one. This issue takes us into the world of 6160, and while the focus is on the Parkers, there are some very interesting tidbits we can glean from this, and I imagine we're going to see in future issues of this series as well as the other series that are coming very soon. Stuff like Matt Murdock being a priest and Harry Osborn being an orphan as both his parents are dead and he's been forced to lead his family's company. One thing I found quite interesting about that and the little bit we get of Harry is that he and Peter don't have the usual friendship they usually have across universes. In fact, Peter has never even met Harry before and MJ has only met him in passing. The book spends a lot of time not really focusing on Peter all that much, but Ben Parker. We seldom get Ben stories, because, you know, he's usually dead in every universe, or maybe he's a villain, or maybe he just doesn't exist. So Hickman takes the chance to dive into his character here and actually give him some meat. He's a man grieving as May was killed in the huge explosion we saw in the middle of New York at the end of Ultimate Invasion, the explosion that the Makers Council blamed on Tony Stark. And since the attack, Ben has thrown himself into his work and is kind of shutting everyone out in terms of dealing with May and her death. He does grieve, but he doesn't really want anyone to see it, and everyone does eventually see it when they attend a memorial for the victims at a park. Because of how he is dealing with this grief, everyone is kind of worried about him, and even Jameson is worried, and it leads to probably one of my favorite little bits with him and Peter, where he helps Peter do up his tie and kind of tells him that he needs to watch out for his uncle, and you get this really good sense that they're friends. Peter even sees Jonah a little bit as a father figure alongside of Ben, and it's a very fun dynamic and very different from what we usually get between the two. It all comes to a head as Jameson quits the Bugle after the board decides it's time for some restructuring and bring in Wilson Fisk to run them, something Jameson is vehemently against because he knows Fisk will manipulate their stories and what they can and can't report on. Ben learns of this and also shares Jonah's dislike for Fisk, quitting the company as well, with the hint that they are going to go and start their own paper, a paper that focuses on truth rather than whatever Fisk wanted them to do. Fisk's rule of the Bugle quickly takes a hit when he's attacked by the Green Goblin shortly after taking over the company. The villain bombs his car and almost kills the man, and this feels super deliberate on Hickman's part, and it's probably a bit of a reach, but the way it's sort of presented and the way we see how Ben Parker has been acting, and he's very distant from everyone and might be prone to lashing out maybe. I'm thinking maybe the Goblin in this universe is Ben Parker. It'll either be Ben or maybe even Harry working for Ben, as we see that both of them have a prior relationship thanks to Ben's role as an editor at the Bugle and the grief they share of their loved ones dying in the incident. I think that would actually be a really unique relationship to have, because that's something we've never seen before, a Ben Parker Harry Osborn relationship where maybe Harry is looking for a father figure and finds it in Ben, and maybe Ben instills him with some sort of, you know, great power, great responsibility sort of thing like he does with Peter, but Harry maybe ends up taking it the wrong way and becomes the Green Goblin, or maybe even the Green Goblin is not a bad guy, because I mean, he bombs Wilson Fisk, and you know, Wilson Fisk is a bad guy, so maybe the Green Goblin in this universe is a bit more of a vigilante a la the Punisher. Again, it's all really great world building and stuff that Hickman has really excelled at, and I like that it gets your mind thinking of where the story could go. He did this all through the Krakoa era when he was running things. Where is the story going to go? What could possibly happen with these characters, and really nothing is off the table, and that's why I like it so much. Anything can happen. Whatever that ends up being will be a future issue problem. I'm sure they'll deal with it quite quickly, since the events of Ben leaving the Bugle lead to a big crux of the issue, which is Peter confides in his uncle that he feels like he's in a rut and that something is wrong with his life, and he feels part of him is missing. He loves his life, but he feels like he is sleepwalking through it. Hickman throws in his own take to the great power speech here, with Ben imparting some wisdom to Peter and explaining that if he's sleepwalking through life, then he just needs to wake himself up. And this is backed by a wonderful sequence of Peter talking it out with MJ and bluntly telling her that while he loves her and the kids, he needs change in his life, and MJ agrees, which is insane. Like, it's insane to see these two characters talking it out, and Peter, this more mature Peter, actually talking with his wife and his family about his problems instead of bottling them up and acting like an incel weirdo like he is in the mainline ongoing at the moment. MJ, of course, is just the loving wife she always should be, and very supportive of what he needs to do, since we learned the night before Peter was visited by a hologram of Tony Stark, who reveals that he has sent Peter the spider that was meant to bite him 20 years prior, revealing everything about the Maker and how the Maker manipulated time and events of this world and stole the life that Peter Parker was meant to have, the life that Peter feels he is missing. Along with the spider, Tony also gives Peter a bit more of a leg up, as we learn that he also gives him a stealth suit, which will eventually become the spider suit. And I'm sure people are going to have a big problem with that, but I really don't, mainly because this Peter Parker, from what we see, isn't really that much of a science-minded person. I mean, we don't really see much of that this issue. We see that he is a very intelligent being, but he's just working at the paper as just a reporter. He's not really into science all that much from what we glean from little parts of his life. So he's just not in that world as of yet, and I imagine he will eventually make that transition over into a more science-based hero and person. And I like that this is Tony sort of giving him that sort of head start, if you will, to get him on the road to being that hero and fulfilling the destiny he was meant to have that was taken by the Maker. So Peter does indeed get the spider, and he allows it to bite him after getting essentially permission from both his Uncle Ben and MJ, and he finally becomes Spider-Man in a wonderfully rendered final page by Marco Checchetto. Checchetto joins Hickman again as the book's artist, and his work fits Spider-Man so well. The issue is mostly character drama with very little action, but the emotion he brings to the characters and range he can give them is just fantastic. Those final pages with Peter choosing to become Spider-Man really had the proper scope to them, and the final page with the hero in silhouette kind of coming out of the shadows, coming out of Peter into the sunlight as the sun dawns across the city is a great representation of the new Ultimate Universe as a whole, but then also as Peter's character arc. You know, he's come out of the shadows, he's finally the person he is meant to be. Hickman and Checchetto's reboot of Spider-Man is a complete winner in my book. It hit all the right notes that I know a lot of people want. You know, Peter has a family, he's happy with MJ, he's got 2 kids, he's working at the Daily Bugle, Uncle Ben is still alive. It gives a unique dynamic to the book that we really never see, since Ben is never around due to obvious plot reasons. The world building that Hickman does through this new Ultimate Universe is just fantastic. I'm very excited to see all of these characters like Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock and Harry Osborn make more appearances as the book goes on, and we know that Wilson Fisk will be Spider-Man's first big villain, which is very exciting. All in all, it was just a fantastic book, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very happy with every single part of this. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10. And if you want to see more of the newly returned Ultimate Universe, be sure to check out my complete story video on Jonathan Hickman's Ultimate Invasion, the story that kicked off the new Ultimate Universe stories. You can find a link to that video right here on the screen now.